My ranking system just said James Madison deserved a bye in the college football playoffs last year, as the second best team in college football. Obviously, this has to be a mistake. And before you start throwing snowballs at me, let's talk about the math behind my first version of the rankings. The goal behind NovaKing Sports is simple. What if you ranked sports teams without caring who they are? No logos, no preseason random guess rankings, no allegations of bias. Every team gets exactly one rating from a black box model that only cares about on-field performance. Obviously, this is much easier said than done. There are tons of factors that are hard to quantify in sports. So for version 1, I kept it simple, and we'll grow from there. Let's dive in. Here's the basic idea. Imagine two teams both score 30 points. Your first thought would be, well, how good was the team they played? And that's the point. If you score 30 against a defense that usually gives up 40, you're probably a team that needs to schedule harder games instead of beating up on a team trying to break the record for longest losing streak ever. However, if you score 30 against a defense that usually gives up 12, that's a very different conversation. So instead of asking, how many points did you score? The model asks, how many points should you have scored against that opponent? Same thing on defense. Holding a great offense to 21 points is impressive. Holding Iowa to 21 points? Well, that might have been their season high for the year. Here's where it gets a little more complicated. To know how good your opponent is, I have to know how good their opponents are, which depends on their opponents, which depends on their opponents. Layers on layers on layers, just like that one movie. So the computer keeps recalculating everybody over and over until every rating settles down. Thankfully, computers are much faster at this than we are. So, why James Madison? Because the model doesn't know they're James Madison. As far as it's concerned, Georgia is just James Madison with a speeding problem. It only sees what happened on the field. And second best team in America? No. And that's actually one of the most interesting parts mathematically. Models like this can easily run into a bubble. If a group of teams mostly plays each other, their rankings start to drift away from everybody else's till you really only see them every other Christmas. And this is actually a huge contention point in college football. There are so many teams, it's very hard to compare across conferences. And the few connections there are between conferences tend to be very few and far between. They're also at the beginning of the season, so it's hard to predict when teams get better or worse, or how a conference top to bottom stacks up against another conference. That's how we get these ridiculous ideas like the SEC should break away from everybody else. So yes, James Madison being number 2 probably says just as much about the structure of college football scheduling as it does about James Madison. But that's exactly the kind of thing I wanted this project to uncover. The point isn't to replace the AP poll, or convince you James Madison would have beaten Georgia. After all, this is just version 1. The only stats we're using are points and yards and a tiny correction for home field advantage. A somewhat impressive list for a model so simple, but obviously one that's still incomplete.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
The point is this. Every ranking has assumptions, biases, and baffling decisions. At least when my rankings are wrong, it doesn't try to gaslight you into believing SEC bias isn't real. In the end, did James Madison deserve a CFP bye? Yes.